My daughter insisted on participating in a dad swap activity to experience a different kind of education. So, she went to her classmate's house, and her classmate came to mine. I tutored her classmate with his homework, limited his screen time, and meticulously helped him create a study and life plan. However, at the end of the day, her classmate seriously said to me, "Sir, you're really old-fashioned. You're still using the parenting methods of the previous generation. With a dad like you, Anna is so unlucky." What I didn't expect was that when my daughter came back, she grumbled, "You're not as handsome as Mr. Ito, and you don't pamper or understand me like he does. Mom is right, you're not fit to be my dad." After some reflection, I decided to try to meet my daughter's wishes and learn from her classmate's father. But even then, she still disliked me. Later, unable to find a balance between work and family, I developed a serious illness. When I asked my daughter for money, she shot me a cold look and said, "You're already old. You've lived enough. What's the point of wasting money on you? I've given the money to Mr. Ito to hire a nanny. You figure it out yourself." In my despair, I died. When I woke up again, I had been reborn. Now, my daughter's classmate is teaching me how to be a father. Chapter 1, he said. "Although you've only been my dad for a day, I've already had enough. How could there be such a boring dad like you in this world? My dad is really good to me. He gives me freedom, never makes me feel uncomfortable. I can do whatever I want. Not like you who controls everything and limits this and that." 13-year-old David rolled his eyes and added, "Anna is so unlucky to have a dad like you. Fortunately, she met me. This book is what I wrote for you. Take it." David, just like in my past life, handed me a handwritten booklet. The cover read, "A Guide to Being a Father." In my previous life, when I heard those words, I fell into deep self-doubt, because, looking from the outside, my relationship with my daughter had always been tense, and I couldn't help but wonder if my parenting methods were really the problem. But my tragedy began with that booklet. After marrying my wife Willow, she quit her job. She said, "When you marry a man, you marry his wealth and support." She didn't want to continue working tirelessly after marriage. Thankfully, I had a decent job, so supporting the entire family was not a big financial burden. But after I changed my parenting style based on that booklet, I found myself working hard day in and day out, year after year. At home, I had to take care of my daughter with meticulous attention and provide her with emotional support. I was like the tireless machine of the household. After all that effort raising her, she silently went off with some delinquent with dyed hair, got pregnant out of wedlock, and after being dumped, she resolutely took the ball and left the country, claiming she would become an independent heroine in her life, making the scoundrel regret his actions. The scoundrel, on the other hand, was living carefree, while I, the cheap dad, had to work even harder, just to send her a hefty allowance every month. Later, she returned to the country, but rarely contacted me. I thought that she didn't express it, but surely she was still grateful to me deep down. However, when I asked her for money to pay for my medical expenses, she sarcastically said, "How pathetic are you? You've lived 75 years and can't even scrape together $1,000 for medical bills. Look at Mr. Ito. He lived a carefree life, and even as an old man, he has no ailments. Unlike you, always complaining about one pain after another. Having a dad like you is just bad luck." I was abandoned at the hospital steps, sitting there for an entire day. Looking back on my life, I finally realized she had despised me all along. I don't know where things started going wrong. Was it when I sacrificed my health to save money for her to buy dolls, or when I gave up my hobbies and personal dignity just to please her and her mother? Now I've figured it out. It no longer matters what the answer is. What matters is that I'm going to live again. This time, I will live for myself. Chapter 2. I tossed the booklet aside and picked up David's luggage. He was stunned and asked, "Sir, what are you going to do?" I smiled faintly and said, "I'm not a qualified father, so I certainly can't educate you. It's better to send you back to avoid wasting your time." He opened his mouth, but couldn't find anything to say. His house was in the same neighborhood as mine, so it didn't take long to get there. When I opened the door, Makoto was letting my daughter ride the horse, and she was happily eating ice cream. David immediately got angry, walked in without even changing his shoes, grabbed the ice cream from my daughter's hand, and shouted, "Why are you eating my ice cream? Why are you bossing my dad around? Your dad is over there. Go away." My daughter looked at Makoto with a hurt expression and didn't even look at me. Makoto sighed and gently said to David, "Isn't today the dad swap activity? Why are you back?" Anna proudly said, "Yeah, David, according to the rules, he is my dad today. Your dad is over there." She pointed at me, her tone full of disdain. David became even more disgusted. He stamped his foot and shouted, "My dad isn't like that. That's your dad. You two look exactly alike." Anna couldn't reply. Her eyes turned red, her lips were tightly pressed together, and her face turned bright red. The next second, she yelled angrily, "I don't want that kind of dad. I want someone like your dad to be my dad." Tears streamed down her face. Makoto looked at me apologetically. He said, "Mr. Wong, don't take the kid's childish words to heart. How about this? Let her stay with us today. And when she calms down, I'll send her back." I had gone through a similar situation in my previous life. Back then, driven by possessiveness and eager to prove that I could also be a good father, I forcibly took the child back. After reflecting on it, I tried to follow Makoto's approach to spoil her, but Anna maintained a stinky face toward me the whole time, ignoring anything I said, while she secretly told her mom that I was a fake father, a wolf in sheep's clothing, pretending to be good when deep inside, I was nothing but bad. The insults were harsh. What could I say in response? Since they said that, wasn't it my fault for not doing more? So this time, if I spoil her again, I'll end up calling her dad. I smiled and said, "Then I'll leave it to you. She can stay as long as she wants, as long as you don't mind." All three of them widened their eyes. David, needless to say, was furious. Anna was surprised. Makoto's expression became complicated, a flicker of displeasure crossing his eyes before being quickly masked by his polite demeanor. He asked, "Isn't this a bit inappropriate?" I turned to Anna and asked, "Do you think it's okay?" Anna looked eagerly at Makoto and said, "Can I stay with Mr. Ito for the rest of my life?" Makoto paused for a moment, then smiled and said, "Of course." He glanced at me, seemingly expecting me to stop her. I sneered and turned to leave. Since they like each other so much, let them lock themselves in. Chapter 3. This weekend, Anna didn't come home. Suddenly, I had a lot of free time. I could casually hang out with my buddies, drinking and having skewers, eat and drink to my heart's content, then head to an internet cafe to stay overnight playing games. I didn't have to worry about whether my daughter had finished her homework, and I didn't have to get up early to drive her to school. I slept until 3 p.m., ordered takeout, opened a can of beer, and stretched my legs while watching a match, enjoying a lazy afternoon. I saw a new game I'd been waiting for a long time, and immediately ordered the collector's edition. At this point, I hadn't given up on myself. In my spare time, I still wrote articles online to earn pocket money. In my previous life, all that money went toward my daughter and wife. Later, my wife complained that I didn't spend enough time with her, so I had to give up that part-time job. From then on, all my free time outside of work went into providing what they called emotional value to my wife and daughter. Now, it felt really good to get that back. While I was in the internet cafe, playing games with my buddies, Willow's video call suddenly came through. As soon as the screen appeared, I saw my daughter's face was bruised. Willow angrily questioned me. "Where have you been? Not even answering the phone. Look at what happened to our daughter. Are you just going to ignore it? What use are you in this house?" I raised an eyebrow and asked Anna, "Weren't you at Mr. Ito's house? Who dared to hit you?" Anna pouted and said, "Who else but David?" I nodded. "Then you must have done something to make him angry." She cracked and said, "All I did was call him Dad." "Does he really need to hit me?" I asked. "Didn't Mr. Ito stop him?" Anna's eyes suddenly turned red, and she wiped her tears. Not saying a word, I became suspicious and said, "Could it be that Mr. Ito just let him hit you?" "Well, what's the point of pretending not to be biased toward his own son?" Willow interrupted me. "Don't use your dirty thinking to judge Makoto. He's always polite and gentlemanly. He would never be biased." Here we go again. Every time I question Makoto's warm-hearted persona, Willow is the first to defend him. My daughter, under her subtle influence, firmly believes Makoto is the perfect father, but she forgets that all of her material comfort and lack of worries were given to her through my hard work. Makoto's concern is all talk, and aside from the dad swap day, my daughter has never really spent time with him. But this time, without my interference, my daughter stayed at Ito's house for 3 days. What happened during that time, I don't know. All I know is that now, she doesn't echo Willow's words like she used to. Instead, she just hangs her head in disappointment. Willow furrowed her brows and said to me, "Anna's in such a bad state. I think the person who tied the knot should untie it. How about I take her to stay with us for a couple of days, let the conflict settle, and then bring her back? After all, you're not home." Before she could start her usual round of persuasion, I quickly interrupted her. "Sure, hope you two have fun." Both of them were shocked. Willow asked uncertainly, "Are you serious?" I waved my hand dismissively. "Yes, really. Don't dawdle. I have business to attend to." I swiftly hung up the video call and went back to my game. In my previous life, on the afternoon when my daughter abandoned me at the hospital door, I thought about many things. At one point, I suddenly woke up. I remembered when I gave Anna her name. Willow had suggested calling her Ji Tengteng. I realized, from the very beginning, I had lost. My entire life had been spent trying to grasp a fleeting wind that would never stay for me. Since I couldn't catch it, I decided not to try anymore. Chapter 4. When I returned home, Willow deliberately pointed to the black swan cake on the table. she said. Makoto specially bought this for you. Look how good he is to you. He's a single father. It's hard enough to take care of his child and earn money, and yet he often brings you gifts. You should help him out more in the future. All right. I stared at the cake and couldn't help but laugh. From the moment Makoto appeared, he had always acted so sincere and warm. He would respectfully call me Mr. Wang and often brought food and drinks. But who buys a man a black swan cake just for no reason? Those snacks and drinks were clearly leftovers from his trip with Willow. I nodded in response to Willow. I see he really likes Anna, and Anna wants him to be her dad. How about we let Anna stay there? They can be companions, and she can just call him a godfather. Willow was stunned. She immediately stood up and said, George, when did you become so generous? Do you have someone else outside? You used to be so concerned about Anna. If she didn't come back for a while, you'd be out searching for her. Now, you're actually willing to let her stay at someone else's house. I smiled. Makoto isn't just anyone. Isn't he the one you trust most? Willow was speechless. A moment later, she asked, Where have you been the last couple of days? Did you go see an ex-girlfriend? She furrowed her brows, pouting, and grabbed my phone to check my spending history. If the old me had seen this, I would have thought she really cared about me. But now, I just found it ridiculous. After looking through it, she let out a sigh of relief, rolled her eyes, and looked at me with disgust. You're already a father, and yet you're still playing games at an internet cafe. How childish. This is the last time. You can't do that again. Then, she suddenly got busy cleaning. Someone once said that when a person feels guilty, they tend to stay busy. That's exactly what Willow was doing now. While wiping the table, she said, Anna is a girl, after all, and there are some things Makoto can't take care of. I interrupted her. Fine, you can go ahead. She widened her eyes, pursed her lips, and hurriedly said, Makoto and I are just simple friends. Don't overthink it. With the kids around, we won't do anything. Even if the kids aren't around, we wouldn't do anything. Her eagerness to explain was really laughable, but in my previous life, I never saw this side of her, because back then, I had tried to catch evidence of her cheating, but every time I failed. She even turned the tables and accused me of being the controlling one, saying she was an independent woman and had every right to her privacy. Now, I didn't care, but she was the one getting nervous. What a sight. I will never forget that day when, at 75 years old, I discovered she had gone on a trip with Makoto. She said to me, We were just looking at the scenery, watching the snow. We never even held hands. It's always been like that. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have so many regrets in this life. She thought that by controlling her physical contact with Makoto, she was being loyal to me. Every time my daughter stood by her, accusing me, she said, Ito is mom's first love. If it weren't for your existence, they would have gotten back together long ago. You've monopolized mom's life. Now that mom is nice to Ito, what's wrong with that? I'd had enough of those days. After they moved out, I packed my things and returned to my hometown. During this time, my daughter posted 3 tweets. She wrote, Finally, God sent me my real dad. David is so annoying. Ito isn't just his dad. Had another fight with David today. My real dad must have died. Not even a call from him. Not long after, Makoto called me. He said, Mr. Wang, Anna misses you. Come back soon. His voice was filled with exhaustion, as if he couldn't pretend anymore. Chapter 5. I didn't respond to him and only returned home the day before New Year's Eve. I didn't tell Willow I was coming back. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Willow and Makoto sitting together, making dumplings. Anna was sitting on the side, mixing the filling, smiling at Makoto and asking, Dad, do you think I mixed the filling well? Just as Makoto was about to answer, he saw me standing at the door. He stood up in a panic and awkwardly explained, Wang mister, please don't misunderstand. Anna meant to call me her godfather. Willow also asked, blushing, Why did you suddenly come back? I asked in return, Where's David? Anna quickly answered, Brother is always jealous of me. After breaking my things, he ran off. He's probably waiting for Ito to find him. But I believe Ito isn't the type to be biased. Makoto forced a smile and tried to stay calm, though I could tell he was anxious. I knew full well that he had been sending me messages every day, subtly urging me to come back quickly, clearly unable to handle Anna anymore. In the manual written by David, he described Makoto as a gentleman who was calm, composed, and always the good guy. But the truth was, he wasn't without temper. He just hid it well. No matter how great an actor one is, everyone has their limits. I raised an eyebrow, pretending not to care. Oh, so the kid I saw earlier was really David? Makoto immediately stood up, asking, What happened to him? I shrugged. I don't know. Looks like he's hanging out with a few troublemakers. Makoto's face changed instantly. He was about to leave but was stopped by Willow, who grabbed his sleeve. Willow bit her lip and said, He's 13 now. He'll come back when he cools down. If you go out now, it will just fuel his temper. Besides, You promised Anna you'd make dumplings with her. Makoto's face showed visible concern, unable to hide his worry. Anna also grabbed his hand, emphasizing, Godfather, you promised to make dumplings with me, and this time, it's David's fault. You can't leave. I couldn't help but laugh. Sweetheart, that's not right. Ito is just showing bias toward his own son. What's wrong with that? Anna yelled at me. Makoto won't be biased. He's not like that. He spoils me the most. With that praise, Makoto slowly sat back down. I silently took a picture of them and posted it on my WeChat moments. 15 minutes later, David kicked the door open. He knocked the whole table of dumplings over and hit Anna on the head with a rolling pin. Chapter 6. Anna wasn't fast enough to avoid it. Clutching her head and crying out in pain. Almost simultaneously, Willow slapped David across the face and grabbed his collar, about to slap him again. Makoto shouted, "What are you doing?" Willow gritted her teeth. "You saw it yourself. From start to finish, it was David causing trouble. If I don't do something, he'll just get worse and more arrogant." Makoto was furious. He shoved her away, growling, "But that doesn't give you the right to hit my son. And look at what kind of daughter you raised, always stirring up trouble with my son, following me around like a shadow. Isn't it annoying? Don't you have any manners?" He then turned to me and shot me a cold look. "As her biological father, don't you feel ashamed?" I shrugged and smiled. "If my daughter doesn't like me and prefers you, what can I do about it? Should I act like the obedient daughter's slave you talk about in your manual, always circling around her? A simp? I'd rather divorce than be a simp." Makoto's eyes lit up, almost simultaneously. Willow's eyes also showed a glint, because I had once said, no matter what, I would never divorce Willow, and I was resolute about it. That's why they did everything they could to irritate me. In my past life, I was very conflicted. No matter how much they disgusted me, I wouldn't divorce. This time, I gave him exactly what he wanted. He momentarily forgot that David was still on the floor, crying in pain. After a pause, he helped the boy up. In a pretense of politeness, he said, "Wong, mister, I didn't mean it like that. Don't throw mud at me. You and your wife should sort out your issues yourselves. I'll leave now." Before he left, he shared a deep look with Willow. My daughter's behavior was even more interesting. After he said all that to her, she actually ran over to stop him, saying, "Ito, don't leave. You promised to make dumplings with me." Makoto quickly hid the disgust in his eyes, smiling. "I'll come back after you two sort things out." Anna pursed her lips and nodded. My daughter couldn't see the disdain in Makoto's eyes. If he really became her stepfather, Anna's good days would be over. Chapter 7. After Makoto and his son left, Willow began to sigh and mutter to herself. She shot me a reproachful look and said, "Recently, you're hardly ever home. Where have you been off to? Enjoying yourself?" I calmly replied, "Your husband has been missing for half a month, and now you're asking me. Isn't that a little late? What were you doing all that time? I wasn't home, and you didn't even bother to call me." Her pupils dilated, her cheeks flushed, and a guilty look crossed her face. At that moment, Anna coldly remarked, "Why are you so angry? You're such a male chauvinist. No wonder no one ever likes you. Unlike Ito, he would never act like you." I sneered. "How long have you been living with a stepfather? You've already figured it out so well. Maybe in time, you'll realize that I'm actually the best father you could have." She rolled her eyes and said, "Stop being shameless. If we weren't related by blood, I wouldn't even want to call you Dad." She got more and more agitated and suddenly screamed, "You're just a useless extra in this family. Can't you just leave and know your place?" I turned to Willow and asked, "Do you think the same?" She lowered her gaze, furrowing her brow. She said, "George, you know I've never done anything to hurt you. I wanted to live happily with you, but as a mother, I believe a child's physical and mental health is more important than anything." I nodded. "That's true. In that case, let's get a divorce." She froze. She was as still as a statue. Even Anna was stunned, and her anger evaporated immediately. Willow said, "Don't tease us." I smiled. "I'm not joking about something like this." Anna became excited and said to Willow, "Mom, hurry up and draft the agreement. Otherwise, he might change his mind." Willow frowned and softly scolded her. "Don't speak carelessly. We'll talk about this later." Willow was always like this, acting like a saint while wanting to have it all. But an hour later, she handed me the agreement. She said, "For Anna's sake, we'll temporarily divorce. When she's better, we can remarry." I skimmed through the agreement and tossed it aside. I said, "Regarding the asset distribution, this isn't right." She frowned. "What's wrong with it?" I spoke directly. "By law, you've used the money I earned to support your brother's living expenses all these years. The house you bought for your parents back home without telling me has to be factored in. And I also found out that you've secretly loaned money to Makoto to buy a car these past few months. This money also needs to be added to the distribution." Her face went pale, and she stared at me, dumbfounded. Embarrassment and discomfort flooded her face. In the end, realizing she was in the wrong, She agreed to my proposed asset distribution, and I took most of the wealth. On the first day back to work after the new year, we went to file for divorce, entering a 30-day cooling-off period. When I packed up and was about to leave, Makoto came to see me off. He put on a guilty expression and said, "Wong, mister, I didn't expect this outcome. I'm truly sorry." I smiled faintly. "If you two get married, please take good care of my daughter. Don't let her suffer." Makoto nodded. "Of course, I treat all children equally, with no favoritism." Willow snorted and pretended to scold me. "George, what are you talking about? Makoto and I don't have the kind of relationship you think. Lending him money is just a mutual help between friends. Nothing more. Don't overthink it." Such a hypocrite. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her and turned to leave. From now on, everything here is none of my business. But, what I didn't expect, Willow suddenly started messaging me frequently. Chapter 8. The day after the divorce, Willow texted me, complaining that David was rude and that as soon as he moved into the new place, he started fighting with Anna over the room. On the third day, she complained again, saying it was tiring to take care of two children, especially one who wasn't even her biological child. By the fifth day, her messages began questioning Makoto. She said, "Both kids are asking him for help with their homework. Anna truly doesn't know, but David pretends not to understand to seek attention. He actually let Anna do it on her own. He wasn't like this before." I didn't reply. Every day I was out enjoying myself with a few good buddies, playing ball at the court after work, sweating it out, taking a shower, and then heading to an internet cafe for some gaming. I was living the kind of carefree life, with no time to deal with these issues. Unexpectedly, on Lantern Festival, Willow called me directly. She opened the conversation with more complaints, saying, "Every year, I go back to my hometown for Lantern Festival. Anna misses her grandparents." But just as we were about to leave, I found out that Makoto only bought Anna a ticket to her grandparents' house and expected me to go with him and his son to his place. She sounded wronged. Now Anna's really upset. Before she could finish, Anna grabbed the phone from her. She said, "Dad, how could he do this to me? When I changed dads, he treated me so well." I was speechless and replied, "You chose your dad yourself, so there must be some misunderstanding. Just go and act a little cute, and it'll all be fine." With a teary voice, she asked, "Dad, can't you just not divorce?" Before you divorced, Ito was really good to me. I sneered inwardly. As expected, a thankless person is still a thankless person. Don't expect her to truly regret her actions. I remained calm and answered leisurely, "I can't do that." Then I hung up the phone. When they tried to call again, I didn't answer. Instead, I quietly forwarded the messages Willow had sent me, as well as the recording of the phone call, to Makoto. Makoto lost his composure. He angrily texted back, "Now that you're divorced, why are you still pretending with me? Trying to turn things around during the cooling-off period? Dream on. Don't think Willow is mad at me. If I just flatter her a little, she'll be back in my arms." He still didn't understand Willow. Willow is a little fairy, as she likes to call herself, an independent woman who loves herself the most. How could someone like her be willing to follow her husband back to his family's home, bearing the guilt of neglecting her daughter? Sure enough, from what I saw posted on social media, it ended up with the father and son compromising and going with Willow to her parents' home. The next day, my former brother-in-law told me that a good show was unfolding at home. My father-in-law, to test whether Makoto was a good enough stepfather, deliberately favored Anna, repeatedly embarrassing David. Makoto, eager to show loyalty to his future father-in-law and reassure him about Willow, chose to temporarily favor Anna, neglecting David multiple times. My brother-in-law overheard Makoto telling David to hold on for another month and that everything would be fine once the cooling-off period ended. But not long after, David came to find me. Chapter 9. When he found me, he was holding a phone, recording a video, and shouted at the camera, calling me Dad. "Dad, I finally found you." I smiled and asked, "Are you sure you've got the right person?" He shrugged indifferently and said, "Anyway, since the day I changed dads, I've never changed back. From today on, you're my dad." Clearly, this was an act of rebellion, using me to provoke Makoto. I sneered, "Sorry, I don't want a son like you." He quickly changed his expression and blocked my path, asking, "You have nothing left now, and I'm the only one willing to be close to you. What gives you the right to reject me?" I replied slowly, "I have money, I have free time, and I have my beloved career and my parents who raised me. I'm content." He froze for a moment, gritted his teeth, and said, "But you've lost your wife and daughter. They are the most important people in your life." I was speechless. I said, "You may have misunderstood. It's not because they are my wife and daughter that they're automatically important to me. It's the people I truly value who are important. No matter what your identity is, it doesn't make you automatically important. Parents raise their children without thought. Children grow up and forget their parents. And husbands and wives marry but live separate lives. Do you think they find each other important? He cried and yelled at me. I don't care. Go get my sister back. Don't let her keep taking my dad. I spread my hands and said, that's not something I can control. What can I do? Your dad is just that amazing, and my daughter depends on him so much. Suddenly, he grabbed my hand, and with an almost pleading tone, he pressed, no, she took my dad, so I'm going to take her dad. You have to treat me the way you treat him. I sighed and said, how exactly do you want me to treat you? He said, just follow the dad guide I wrote. Hearing his entitled tone, I almost laughed. I raised an eyebrow and nodded. All right, since you're still young, I'll take care of you for a few days. But let me be clear, I'm not your dad, and I won't follow your guide. If you want to stay with me, you'll have to follow my rules. He was silent for a few seconds, then slowly nodded. I smiled helplessly. I arranged a room for him, set up a study plan, made sure his meals were nutritious, helped with homework, and then took him out to relax, whether it was playing games, going to an amusement park, skiing, eating good food, or buying fun things. I treated him the way I used to treat my own children. The difference was that while my daughter often refused to do things with me because she felt there was a generational gap, David had no choice but to go along with whatever I suggested. My daughter always thought I was an old-fashioned relic who couldn't understand the ideas of the new generation, so she rejected any invitation to hang out with me. Even when I bought 2 tickets to see her favorite celebrity, she'd ask if I could go alone, because she didn't want to be embarrassed in front of her classmates. Honestly, that really bothered me. But taking David out to experience these activities gave me a new kind of feeling. The first day, he was still frowning, constantly checking his phone as if waiting for someone's message. By the second and third days, he started to smile more. He was fairly average in many ways, but he had an extraordinary confidence. Even if his grades were terrible, he would comfort himself by saying he was a late bloomer, destined to surprise everyone. When he almost had an accident skiing and I had to save him, he claimed he was the child of good fortune. Then he said to me, Wang, mister, I didn't expect you to be so amazing, skiing so well. If I wasn't mistaken, for the first time, I saw a hint of admiration in his eyes. I taught him skiing, helped with homework, and even arranged Spanish lessons for him. His schedule was packed. The day he was praised by his teacher for his rapid improvement, he jumped up and cheered for me. He posted 10 updates on social media, declaring that he could be a genius too. At that moment, I realized, it wasn't my teaching methods that were the problem. It was because Anna didn't like me that I seemed to be wrong in everything I did. With that answer in mind, my connection with David was about to end. When I was packing up his things, he walked in, excited. He said, Wang, mister, let's go to this comic convention. The cosplayers we both like will be there. His smile froze when he noticed what I was holding in my hands. His voice trembled as he asked, Mister, what are you planning to do? I calmly replied, you're not my son, so I can't keep taking care of you. You should go back now. Before I could finish, Makoto's anxious voice came from outside the door. He shouted, George, give my son back to me. Chapter 10. David's face changed, and he quickly opened the door. The first thing I saw was Makoto standing at the door. His hair was messy and greasy, his eyes red, and the buttons of his shirt were all misaligned. He looked disheveled, completely unlike the elegant and composed person I used to know. David, perhaps seeing him in such a state for the first time, was startled and took a few steps back. Makoto, however, grabbed him and said, David, come home with Dad. David turned coldly and replied, aren't you the one who loves Anna the most? Go take care of her. I'm doing fine here. It's a lot better than being with you. Yesterday, the teacher praised my progress in studies. Looks like I'm not as bad at learning as you said. Makoto furrowed his brows, looking like he was about to explode, just like I did when Anna pissed me off in the past. He gritted his teeth and said, no, you're my son, David. You have to come back with me. Our lives will get better. You'll have a mom too. David suddenly exploded like a firecracker. He shouted, don't talk to me about Willow. I hate her. She's not my mom. She will never be my mom. This was true. In the past life, although Willow was fond of Makoto, she treated David poorly. The two of them were like fire and water, and David argued with Makoto countless times because of this stepmother. After their marriage, David rarely went to visit Makoto, while my cheap daughter often went to visit him. At this moment, Makoto snarled, you've been fooled by George. Don't listen to his nonsense. Come back with me. Now, don't make me beat you. David forcefully shoved his hand away, disgust clearly written on his face. I pulled at the corner of my mouth and smiled, saying, it's getting late. Please leave, both of you. I've already sold this house, and the new owner is coming soon. David panicked and grabbed me, asking, Dad, where are you going? Take me with you. Makoto suddenly swung a punch, hitting David and knocking him back. Makoto shouted, I'm your dad, you ungrateful little brat. David was stunned from the punch but quickly pushed him off and ran outside. A familiar scene pulled me back to the lonely and miserable life of my past life. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again, the bright spring sunshine outside the window greeted me. Thankfully, everything was over. Chapter 11. The day before the end of the divorce cooling-off period was Anna's birthday. Willow sent me dozens of messages urging me to come back, saying that if I didn't, she wouldn't go through with the divorce. When I arrived, Anna was unwrapping a gift from Makoto. It was a necklace worth 20,000 yuan. Anna jumped up, her eyes full of affection. Willow's gaze softened when she looked at Makoto, and she said, "I've wronged you these days. You really still care about Anna." My father-in-law also nodded at him. Money was indeed a powerful thing. It so easily bought people's hearts. Suddenly, everyone turned to look at me. They all asked, "George, where's your gift?" Anna muttered, "What kind of gift can he possibly buy? He's so cheap." She said this, but I noticed her frequently glancing behind me, as if expecting something. I remembered that during the days when I was taking care of David, she had sent me some messages. The gist was that I was an irresponsible father, not taking care of my own daughter and instead raising someone else's child. I ignored her at the time. I directly followed her words and admitted, I knew Anna wouldn't like the gift I'd buy, so I didn't buy anything. Everyone's expression changed, and Anna's face was full of resentment. Makoto looked surprised, seemingly not expecting me to miss this opportunity to flatter Anna. Willow immediately pulled me aside and asked, "What's wrong with you? It's Anna's birthday, and you didn't buy her a gift. Do you really want a divorce?" I coldly looked at her and then laughed out loud. I asked, "What? Do you think I'm just pretending?" Her pupils widened, and she bit her lip, saying, "George, you wouldn't have a mistress, would you?" I shrugged and replied, "Don't try to play the victim here. I'm not buying it. You know exactly what your intentions are. I don't have time to discuss this. Just get the divorce done." She pressed her lips together and said, "George, actually, we don't need to go this far. Over the past few weeks, I've thought a lot. You've always treated me well. You're the best person for me. As for Makoto, I've seen through him. He has his flaws too. I don't want to start over with someone else. And besides, Anna is our daughter. Makoto's presence won't change anything. You should be more generous. Don't care so much. Just think of it as having an extra guy to help raise our daughter. How nice is that?" I was speechless. I felt like I was about to crack. I pinched the bridge of my nose and said, "You must be out of your mind. What nonsense are you talking about? So you want me to work my ass off outside, earn money to support you and Makoto's carefree life, right?" She said. "I didn't mean it like that," I replied. "It doesn't matter what you meant. I really don't care about hearing your nonsense." I turned to leave. She suddenly grabbed my sleeve and said, "Fine. I promise I'll cut ties with Makoto." I pried her hand off and said, "Get lost." The next second, Anna suddenly burst in, pointing at me. "Mom, why are you trying to keep him? Ito was so good to me. I want him to be my dad, not you. Let's go." Willow looked at me deeply, and in a soft voice, she said, "George, why do you always play hard to get? You know you still love me." I immediately gave her the middle finger. Chapter 12. Makoto stood a short distance away, his eyes swirling with stormy waves. He quickly pushed a bicycle over and smiled at Anna, trying to please her. "Anna, I also got you a bicycle. You can ride this one for now. If it's uncomfortable, I'll buy you a better one." Anna smiled and reached out to take the bike. A gust of wind swept past me. I didn't know when, but David had been hiding outside and overhearing. He suddenly rushed in, grabbed the bike, and began inspecting it. Anna grew anxious and tried to take it back, saying, "This is my bike. Give it back." David, who was taller and more muscular than Anna, shoved her aside with a press of his chest. He said, "Get out of the way, you crazy girl." Makoto saw his hard-earned relationship with his son was about to be destroyed and quickly spoke up. "What's wrong with you, kid? Dad will buy you a bike soon," David replied. "No." David was extremely agitated, his words spitting out in anger, spraying Makoto's face. His eyes were bloodshot, and he screamed in fury. "All you care about is this woman and this crazy girl. There's no place for me in your life. I don't want to live anymore. Let you have your peace." He tossed the bike aside, pulled a knife from his pocket, and slashed it across his arm. Dark red blood flowed from his wound. Horrifying to see, Makoto completely broke down, falling to his knees, pleading with David to stop. He shouted, Son, why can't you understand? Please stop." David, already beyond reason, laughed maniacally, slashing another cut across his arm. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a sort of desperate hope, as if waiting for me to say something to stop him. Makoto noticed this and turned to beg me, kneeling down. "Wong, please, you have to talk to David. He always talks about you when he's back. He says I'm not as good as you at being a dad. Please, say something. Wong, I'm begging you." He completely abandoned his pride and started furiously kowtowing to me. He said, I was wrong. It was all my fault before. I was shameless. Trying to take your family's inheritance. I was despicable. Please, Wang, save my son. He's the only son I have. Before I could speak, Anna interrupted. She said, none of you are allowed to talk him out of it. You're my real dad, and you're my future stepdad. You're all my dads, and you're not allowed to take sides. Makoto's eyes narrowed, and in a flash of anger, he slapped Anna, making her mouth twist to the side. Makoto cursed. Shut up. If the Ito family ends with me, I'll take your life. Willow, hearing this, immediately pulled Anna behind her. Frowning with anger, she said, why is your son acting like this? Why are you hitting my daughter? How come I never noticed you had violent tendencies? Makoto's emotions were already shattered. He slapped Willow across the face with a resounding sound and roared. Hitting you is too light. Do you see what's happening to my son? What nonsense are you talking about? For months I've been putting up with you too, and you still got the nerve to get uppity. Do you think I want to be a sucker? If it weren't for your family's money, I'd have slapped you both 100 times by now. Anna's eyes widened in disbelief as she asked, Sir, you're not serious, are you? Makoto gritted his teeth and said, Serious? Who would want someone like you? A kid who even rejects her own father. The room fell silent. Makoto, in a panic, turned to David and tried to grab the knife from his hands. I sighed and extended my hand toward David, saying, David, give me the knife, and go with your dad to bandage your wound. His nostrils flared, his eyes quickly filling with tears. The next second, he did something I never expected. The knife, already almost in my hand, was suddenly pulled back with astonishing speed, shocking everyone in the room. The sky was silent, except for Makoto's piercing, endless cries. Chapter 13. David died at the age of 13. No one knew what he was thinking in his final moments. I vaguely remembered, in my previous life, when I was lying in the hospital bed, waiting for death, he came to see me once. In my past life, he had always looked down on me and treated me with disdain, but when I was near death, he was the only one who visited. At that time, he had already been living abroad for many years, and only came back during holidays. But that day, he crossed oceans and mountains, walked into a small hospital room, and said to me, I'm sorry. His words were soft, but I still heard them clearly. That was the real reason I took him in. Makoto developed a severe mental illness and stayed in the hospital for a long time. After being discharged, he disappeared for several days. At this time, Willow suddenly came to me. She brought Anna with her and looked at me earnestly. She said, Hubby, let's start over. From now on, it'll just be the three of us in this house. Anna hesitated, then said to me, Dad, I miss you. Please come home. I'll listen to you from now on. I let out a helpless laugh. I said, if you won't cooperate with the divorce, then let's go to court. I have plenty of time. Anna cried and rushed over to grab my arm. She said, Dad, I was wrong. You're the person who loves me most in this world. Don't leave me. I'll listen. I'll be good. I won't look down on you anymore. I took a deep breath and coldly looked at her, and in my ear, I could almost hear the words she once said in the past life. She had said, at our age, why bother with treatment? You might as well just die. At the thought of this, I sneered, shook her hand off, and walked away without hesitation. They didn't give up. They pestered me for over a month. Wherever I went, I could hear their apologies. Just as I was about to file for divorce, Willow told me she had agreed to it. I didn't ask her why the sudden change of heart. I signed the papers swiftly and ended that disgusting relationship. I changed all my contact information and moved to a small city in the north to begin my life of early retirement. One afternoon, my mother told me that Willow had fallen and become disabled. Apparently, while cleaning the windows, she had accidentally fallen down the stairs and became permanently disabled. My mother also said that Anna, unable to find me, often went to her to complain. She said Willow's agreement to divorce had a reason. On that day, Makoto suddenly appeared. He finally tricked Willow into bed, and afterward, he kneeled to apologize, promising he would treat her and Anna well after marriage. Willow believed him, so she agreed to divorce me. But after Makoto married her, he appeared to be a loving, doting husband in public. Behind closed doors, however, he skillfully applied psychological pressure on Anna. He crushed her spirit, making her doubt her own worth. Even when Anna made progress in her studies, he would say with disappointment, I thought you could do better. Many people couldn't understand why. Although he seemed to treat Anna so well, the child seemed to live in an environment where neither father nor mother cared for her. I smiled. That's the brilliance of Makoto. He was a master of psychological control. Now, with Willow's legs broken and Anna still in her first year of middle school, their struggles were far from over.